Jeff actually did a whole thing last week to try to work out the tech on this. And so I wanted a chance at it. So we're going to talk about hiring today. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump right in to our topic du jour as we go through, which of course is all about the magic hiring funnel. This essentially is helping those of you that are, well, it doesn't matter if you're a freelancer, you're starting to hire in, maybe even just a VA or something like that. Or you've got a team like Jeff and I do here at Profit School, and you're trying to expand to, your existing team or help expand their teams as you build a team of teams type of thing. You're going to need to learn how to hire. That's an important skill. So we want to talk about that a little bit because I have a bunch of experience just from sort of past lives in the business world when it comes to hiring, and I think a little bit differently about it. Here at Profit School, we think very differently, I think, about hiring than what traditional sort of the traditional process of hiring is. So we're going to go through that and sort of how we think about it here at Profit School. And that's the whole point of this, right? All these trainings here at Profit School are designed to get you to think a little bit differently. Because if we don't change how we think, we're not going to get different results, right? So we're going to be chatting about that as we go through finding the right person for the right job at the right time. Just to very quickly sort of cover the framework that we're going through. So remember, the wagon wheel is where your team is delivering work to you. Even if you're just a freelancer, you're still in that wagon wheel mentality where you're doing everything. A lot of times with freelancers start building out smaller teams, the team is still kind of going back to the owner, pushing everything back to that middle person, and you're still kind of stuck, but now the team is delivering a bunch of work to you, even though you have a team, and you end up finding errors that they didn't find. You end up which again is stuff that's going to happen. It's normal, but you end up being in the middle and all this work is coming to you all the time. You're like, how did I get here? Right. So the idea is, how do we get out of the wagon wheel? So what we want to do is move into defining our system, right? So in this case, and I'm going to sort of chat about this, how it relates to hiring specifically, when you have a problem with capacity. Right. So when we talk about delegation, and you'll hear about this in future trainings, you've got that capacity and you've got capability, right? Capability, if you don't have capability on your team, then it's just training. But if you don't have capacity, if you don't actually have the muscle on your team, you've got to add to capacity, right? So this is the problem, that if you've defined it and you're like, okay, my problem is capacity, you're going to have to start initiating hiring, right? Which is where you organize the process of hiring, which is what we're going to talk about today, right? This ability to organize. At that point, we deliver it out to our people. And again, if you're a freelancer, that's you. And then your job is to then take what you've organized and get it out there, right? So in this case, it would be what we would call an internal product, where the result is that we're trying to find a new team member for our team, right? That's how that would go about. So we're going to take the actions to go through. And again, we're going to talk about that, what it actually looks like in the hiring funnel process. But once we get your actions defined, which we're going to go through today, then it's just about going through those actions, right? Delivering the product. Again, when we say product, there's internal products that you're going to use for your company internally, and there's the external products that, of course, are our products and services that you traditionally think about with your customers. At that point, now it's about making the offer. So it's going out, putting out the job posting. In this case, we're going to make sure that we hit our objectives, which we'll talk about. And then ultimately you build your report. How well did it work? And do we want to keep doing that? That's how you eventually start getting to this racing team model. And remember, the whole point of the racing team is you're not in this wagon wheel anymore, right? You're not sitting there stuck in the middle as much. Instead, it's more of like a racing team model where on the racetrack, your team is pit crew. They are there to help you stay out on the track and win the race, right? So they're delivering not work, but they're delivering focus so that you can get the job done that you need to do. And then while they do the job that they need to do, it's kind of the idea of how we're trying to get there. So this is sort of how it relates to hiring. So I totally messed up that slide there, so we'll take that out later. The main problems, I think, with hiring are this. So too many unqualified applicants. I see that kind of being a challenge with most people. I've talked to a lot of owners who are like, man, they were so good on the interview, but they were horrible when they came to actually getting the job done. So we'll talk more about that. Misleading resumes, they don't tell the whole story. Like, how do you actually read a resume? So I can give you kind of some tips on some things like that. I wish I had some samples. I don't. Maybe for a future talk, we can do something along those lines. And then the other aspect is you've got these newer hires, right, that are really skilled, like they were really, really good, but while they're not failing on the job because they don't have the skills, they're failing on the job because of the wrong cultural fit, and they end up being really disruptive to your organization, right? So we're going to talk about some of that stuff as well. So I clearly didn't, I totally thought I had all these slides organized and clearly didn't. So let's go ahead and take a look. We're just going to dive right in, and I'm going to walk through this as we go. This is why we do this on a soft launch. This is why I love this week. so we can play with all this stuff. All right, so let's go take a look. I'm going to jump into one of my favorite teaching tools here, which is Lucid Charts. So we're going to pull that up. 3 main stages we're going through: the job posting, the application, the interview. I'm going to give you some highlights on some different ways that, again, that we think about it here at Profit School. Hopefully it helps you out as well. When you come to the job posting, so the whole idea is you need to, and this is key, you need to repel. That is counterintuitive. Most people, when they are trying to hire somebody, they're trying to attract, to find. And you hear this language everywhere. I got to attract good talent. I got to find good talent. I got to sell them to work for my company. And I get it. And it's not entirely wrong, but it ignores the actual, what I think is a more useful way of looking at it, which is when you're going out there with your job posting, the first thing it needs to do is tell everybody who should not be applying for this job to go away, right? So you write it to repel. And when you write your copy, which essentially was what a job description is, and it's something else important to keep in mind, you're actually writing copy. It's persuasive languaging. The idea is that you're writing it in a way. So if I'm not a good cultural fit for you, and we'll talk about kind of what that means here. If I'm not a good cultural fit, meaning I am either, I don't have the skills, right? So we'll say the skills. So I need to know, do I have the skills? If I do not have the skills, this thing should tell me that, like, oh, you need to have this, this, and this. This is required. For example, you must know this, this, and this. Get specific if you need specific skills. So like when it comes to, let's say, a copywriter, right? You have to write persuasive copy. You need to make sure that you're, adjusting behaviors, and that you're used to doing multiple versions of your copy, or whatever the thing is, whatever the skills are that you're looking for. It's things typically that can be tested, which is kind of nice, especially if it's like something more technical, like setting up a measurement system, right? Like a tag manager or Google Analytics, right? Those are more technical skills you can kind of test for. But if I don't have those skills and I'm looking at this job description, what should happen is I go, oh, I don't have those skills. I need to go. So you need to make sure in the job description that it's telling them that. If you do not have this skill, don't even worry about applying, because you're not going to make it through. Just let them know, right? The next thing we've got to do is make sure that we have the, and this is kind of what the, kind of like that supervisor, the team lead, we'll call it the boss fit, let's say manager fit. But it's the type of person that they're going to be reporting to. If that's you, your management style. Are you going to be, inspecting all the time, micromanaging, and you need somebody who's okay with that? Or are you going to be like, hey, I don't have time to take care of you. You need to be able to solve your own problems. So, and I'm not going to be following up with you. I'm just going to give you a result to achieve, and your job is to figure it out. 2 very different management styles, right? So when you're writing the job post, if you're more on the other side, you're like, listen, you need to work independently, but everybody says they need to work independently. So what you would do is you would say, okay, you're going to have work independently. Here's what that means. And you explain it. You're going to be responsible for results. You're going to be responsible for solving your own problems. You will do check-ins with managers, but they will not be there very often for you. Like, again, if that's what's going on. If your company works a little bit more like ours does, we might say, okay, so as here's what it's like to work for you, for the manager or the supervisor or the team lead that you're going to be working with. Here's what's going to happen. They're going to give you a result to achieve. They're going to give you some basic ideas and kind of help you get set up with what some resources you might need to be able to do that. At that point, it is your job to get the result. That's how everybody on the team functions. So everyone's really used to that. And again, I'm explaining to the right person that this is their ideal job. But what I'm really doing is I'm making sure I'm really talking to everybody else, saying this is not the job for you. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to repel out everybody. The only person that's still left is the right person, right? That's kind of the idea here. So I will talk about that. And the managers will be a resource for you, right? But if you need constant attention or micromanaging, things like that, this is not going to be the job for you. You need to move on, right? The final thing, and this is a big one, this takes care of that problem where you have the idea of they were the right skills, they were amazing people, but man, they came in and they just clashed with everybody, right? That is a cultural fit. So this is where you talk about, hey, we're a fast-paced culture. Things are constantly changing. And to be honest, it's a little bit chaotic, but the team freaking loves that. That's a certain personality that's going to read that and be like, oh my gosh, yes, I love that energy. There's also a certain personality, probably more on the corporate side, where they're like, oh my gosh, no, I don't like that at all. I like slow and steady and stable and, So when you write your job descriptions, right, your job postings when they're out there, you should hit those. So here are the skills you're going to have. If you don't have these skills, it's not even worth applying. Here's the type of person you're going to be working with, and then if you don't like working with that type of person, don't even worth applying. And then here's the cultural fit. Here's what's it like working for the team. Here's what we do. We're constantly trying to do bigger, better, faster, stronger, right? We're a small startup. We have a team of less than 5 people, but we've been constantly expanding over the years. We always do more than our fair share. Everybody puts in long hours, but they love it, right? Or, hey, we respect work-life balance. We want to make sure that it's good for your family, if that's your culture. But the thing is to explain it, right? Explain it in a way that repels the person who goes, yeah, that's not going to be good for me. Because you don't want to have to deal with the next stage, which is their application, right? Now, I will say on the job posting, and this has been happening for years, but it's going to go it's going to be so much worse with AI, because AI can apply for everything and AI doesn't know how to say no, right? So a lot of these applicants are just going to say, oh yeah, just have my AI bot apply for every freaking job that is available. So you won't get rid of everybody. You're still going to get a lot of applications, but you have to expect that you're going to have that, right? So you still write the job description so that the actual humans that are interacting that are not part of the job, you can repel. The rest of them that come through, fine. Next stage, go into application. So when you're doing your application, again, what's the first step you are supposed to do? Your job is to repel, right? I'm going to say kick out, because that's just another way of saying that. Our job in the application is to kick them out. So when we talk about the application, we're not talking like you think back in the old days of traditional paper applications, but it is kind of like that. But the application itself is set up in a way so that, and I'll show you an example of this too. So I'll bring it up in a second. But it'll in fact, I'm just going to bring that up now so I can sit there and not have you wait on me while I'm doing that. But the idea is that the application itself, when they come in, I'm assuming they're still the wrong person, right? That's huge. I cannot emphasize that thought pattern enough. You have to just assume they are the wrong person. They should not be here. And you need to sort of get them out, right? You speak to them in a way that they're going to naturally want to go. The application does this. And let me just see if I can give you a templated example. Okay. I think I can do this one. Give me just a second. Okay. All right, this will work. So I'm going to show you one that we have. That's kind of a generic template that we have used to give you an idea of the application and how it kicks people out, right? So this is just the form. Obviously, you can, it's just the template one. So you would change whether the top stuff is. We can use Google Forms for it, type form, doesn't matter, whatever. So first name, last name, best phone number, best email, basic contact information, right? This is obviously, you can see back in the day, we used to use Skype. That's how old this one is, but the concepts are the same. So I'm going to emphasize it here. Preferred method of communication, what position are you applying for? This we were doing back in the day because we could say, well, if you're applying for this position, it goes to this thing, right? So in the case of like a WordPress developer, it goes down here to section 2, WordPress developer. Well, now we're wanting to know, okay, what is their self-assessed skill set, scale of 1 to 10. And then we do it on things that are specific to the job that they will be doing, right? That's kind of the idea. So here it's scale of 1 to 10. And then WordPress user skills. How do you do theme development, plugin development, PHP, CSS, things that are specific to WordPress, right? So if the job post said you must have this, this, and this, let's say CSS, you must be an expert on CSS. But then when they come in here, they say, well, they're a 2 when it comes to CSS. I love them for being honest, but they're not going to make it through the application, right? Because that's part of the thing I'm looking for. Now, as we go through, you will see a bunch of this other stuff, that's all these different skills. What I'm looking for, and I'm going to zoom out here so you can kind of get the idea. What I'm looking for isn't necessarily what their exact score is. So that's a part of it. What I'm looking for is the overall pattern. I want to see, is everybody a 10? Like, when they come in, do they say, oh yeah, I'm a 9 or a 10 at all of it? Because if that's true, if you're an expert at all things, you're probably not an expert at all things. There's got to be something in here, right? Which is where some of this is, like Ruby on Rails and Cold Fusion. It's so rare that everybody's an expert on all things. What I should see is a little bit of bouncing around. They might say, oh, I'm a 2 here or a 3 here. Like I know it, but I could learn it if I needed to, but I'm familiar enough to know it's a thing, but that's about it. Whereas, HTML5, yeah, no problem, right? Whatever the thing is. So and that's what we're doing here is we're testing how they think, right? I'm testing how they think. Do they just think they're awesome at everything? And that's sort of what they're doing? Or are they actually thinking about and slowing down and actually give this application the respect that it deserves in this process? Because if they're not doing that right now, and this is key when you're going to hire, they're going to be the best they're ever going to be right now, right? When they're hiring the interview process, because they're working essentially for free, trying to get this job. They are the most motivated they will ever be to work for you, ever, in this interview process. So whatever you see is the peak of who they are. It's the peak of who they naturally are. So if they're already not at the level you need them to be, and they're just coming through here and they're doing a bunch of 10s because like, yeah, I'm good. That's their peak of who they're demonstrating they are. If that's what you need, awesome. In my case, I don't. I want somebody who's going to think it through. So I take that as a sign to kick them out. I'm looking for reasons to kick them out as I go through. Now, there's a couple other things I wanted to point out in the application. Let me see if I can find an example. I'm sure we have one probably back here. Give me just a second so you can see we've got some older stuff. I don't know if it will be in this one. I thought it was, but I think because this is a template, we took this out. But I'll just give you an example. So what we would do is we would say, let's go back to WordPress, right? So it's like, oh, do you know Ajax? So what we might do is we might come in here and put another question and say, do you know Simple Pro, right? So it's like, okay, Simple Pro, that's a decoy, right? We create decoys in the application because again, if they come in and they say, oh yeah, I know Simple Pro, you're like, how could you know Simple Pro? That doesn't even exist. It's not even a language, right? And if they're just going 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, they're not even looking at the application. They're not actually thinking about it. And that's who they're demonstrating that they currently are. They're somebody who doesn't really take the time to think about stuff and do a good job. So here's the door. They can leave. That's the whole point of the application. We're using it to weed people out, right? To kick them out. So put in decoys. I'm a huge fan of that, especially with the skills, right? And we've done that with project managers. We've done that with, the VAs, everything. We'll make up a thing and we'll just make up something. We've done it with measurement professionals. When we hire measurement professionals, we'll just make up a word and then see if they just go, yeah, that's something. Most of them go one or two. Like, I have no idea. Like, I think I've heard of it, but I'm not sure. And I'll count one or two. That's fine. But if they go to 9s or 10s, like, oh yeah, I know this, or a 6 or a 7, it's like, you're not thinking this through, right? Because they could have just Googled it and found out it's not a thing. So that's the sort of thing that we'll do on the application itself. But remember, the application is to kick them out. So some pro tips there will be the 1 to 10, self-rating. And what you're looking for is that they think about it, right? That they're thinking about it. So they have to think it through. If it's just yes, 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 or no, 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 they're not thinking through. They're going too fast, right? So you want that. You want them to think. The next thing is the decoys on your application. So, and this again is because you're trying to get them to think, right? The whole point is like, yeah, no, I don't think that's a thing. Let me go find out. Oh yeah, it's not. Yeah, I'm a what, right? And they might even say in the notes, sometimes we're like, hey, tell us about something that you have questions on. They're like, yeah, I don't know this thing, but I'm sure I could learn it if you tell me about it. I'm totally cool with that. Because they're telling us up front, yeah, I've never heard of this tool or script or whatever the thing is that you're trying to use. So the decoys help a lot with that. So once we have the job posting in the application, I'm going to add one more thing to the job posting because we do a little self-test here. So we do a little test in the job posting. And this works well for us. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to use the technique, but it does work well for us. The test is because I'm testing to see if they are the person, and we're going to talk more about that on the interview. Because I'm testing to see if they currently are the person who is this job, right? If it's really them and I need them in my company, I'm going to test. And I might say like, well, if you've got the skills, you're comfortable with the, person you've been working with and the company culture seems like a really good fit. Why don't you send us, let's send us your resume, right? Apply, start your email with blank and we make up a sentence, right? My favorite breakfast cereal is whatever. Or make the subject of your line, if it's like a WordPress thing that we were hiring for, I might make the subject line hey, I'm a developer rock star. Just say that. I'm a development rock star. And in your subject line. So they're not going to apply for the generic ad because the ad itself would say like WordPress developer needed or whatever the headline is on the job posting. They would have to change it. They'd have to actually think about it. And what I'm doing is I'm testing them for the details. Can they follow directions and pay attention to the details? Because I need that. That's literal skills I need. So I'm trying to get them to demonstrate they have those skills as they are interviewing through the process. If they miss that, you don't even, and I want to emphasize this, you don't look at their resume. You don't open their email. You filter it out. Like we use Gmail for this. But if you could say like, hey, if if the subject line contains the thing that you need it to contain, put it in a certain filter or group, right? So that you can go through them. Anything that doesn't contain that, delete, get rid of. Don't even open it. Don't even tease yourself. Because sometimes you'll see a resume and people go, oh, I think they're amazing. Oh, no, they're actually perfect. But they missed that one thing, but that's okay. And they are immediately justifying. But remember, they're the best they're ever going to be at this point in time ever. They are demonstrating to you who they currently are, and they're not lying because they're demonstrating in their actions who they currently are. So they're telling you at that point, I'm not a detailed person if they didn't follow directions. So why would you want to continue the conversation, right? The first thing is you repel. You go, cool, I'm going to kick them out. They didn't make it through. So then the test, right? So then the test comes in the application, assuming they pass the test, you go, hey, cool, like let's go through, give them the application. We make sure that we're looking at the self-rating, the decoys, see how they write, stuff like that. Do they have the descriptions? Are they, I'll give you another one here toward the bottom. And this is what we talk about with like decoys, but I'm going to call it confirmation here. So what makes, tell us about how you like to work. Oops, let me just zoom in and make it a little easier for you. If you have too many tasks assigned, how will you let us know? If you have difficulty with the task, how will you let us know? What makes work fun? What makes work difficult? I'm trying to understand who they currently are. What hours do you plan to work? This is important for distributed teams because we have teams all over the world. Most of us do at this point, right? Or you soon will. So what days and times in their local time zone do they want to actually work? Now, this is kind of a decoy, but I'm going to call it confirmation. But in the job description, you might say this is a full-time job. It requires at least 40 hours a week or 35 hours a week or whatever that is for you. Then they come in here and they say, well, I would love to work, from Monday through Friday from 8 to 11. And you're like, all right, well, that's part-time hours. At that point, I'm done looking at the application. They're already kicked out because they are demonstrating to me that they aren't going to be able to work full-time, right? Here, I'm doing this again. And this is where I'm confirming. So I'm looking at here. They said full-time hours here. I go, cool. How long would you like to work for us? If I'm just a few weeks, I'm a contractor, it's a few months or at least a year. You would be shocked how many people will just tell the truth, which I love. I love that they're telling the truth. But they'll say, yeah, I just want a year, at least 1 year, maybe a few months. And I've seen that, even though we say this is a full-time job. We have people that are dedicated to us, been with us for years. We're looking for a next team member to be part of us for the next 10 years of growth. And they come in here and they go, yeah, well, at least a year. I'm just going to try it out, or at least a few months. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for somebody with the commitment of over 3 years. Now, if it's a contract position, if it is a project, I'm totally fine with those answers. So I'm not saying those are always bad. It depends upon the thing you're hiring for. But this is why we put this question in here. It is a confirmation. We're having them reconfirm that, yes, the job description that is full-time, I would like to be over 3 years. That's why I'm coming here. I'm not trying to, work for someplace for a couple of years, get a, and then bump up to the next new job, right? Or whatever that thing is. Given the choice, do you want to work full-time or part-time? Again, this is a confirmation question. It's already in the job description that it's part-time or full-time. So here, if they say, well, I'm really looking for full-time work, but they're applying for a part-time position, they're done. They're out of the application. Why? Because I don't have full-time work, right? It would be, if this thing was part-time, you should be applying for a part-time job. And the fact that you said full-time is really what you're looking for, which is awesome. I love that because it's the truth. But we don't offer full-time. So that means if you have this part-time job and I need somebody for a while, that they're always looking for a full-time job. So I'm pretty quickly, I might have them for a couple of weeks and then they're going to find the job they really want and they're going to leave me. So they're done. And then, of course, the same is true on the full-time. If it is a full-time job, which most of our jobs have been, when they're full-time with that way, and I do believe in that. I try to do full-time for everything. And they apply and they say, well, no, I'm really looking for part-time. Then it's like, nope. Like we need somebody full-time. We're not looking for somebody who just wants a little extra cash. And then same thing here, another confirmation, right? This works especially well when you're doing contractors and vendors from around the world. It's like, hey, are you looking to work exclusively for us or are we just many of your other clients? And we've done this. And they go, yeah, you plus others. It's like, I'm going to be running other stuff. And sometimes that's okay, depending on the job. Most of the time for us, it's not. And so we'd be like, okay, well, if you want to work for others, that's awesome, but you're done. The application now, you don't pass, right? It's kicked you out. It did its job. So, so that's what I'm going to put in here. We're just going to call that the decoys and then the confirmations, right? So confirmation. So this is, again, just sort of helping them demonstrate that they're thinking it through is what these first two are really about. The confirmation is, again, attention to detail. The job posting that they apply to, are they actually going, yes, I'm double confirming in. We also do that for pay. So monthly salary is another example of that. So what's your salary, your local rate? Let's assume that you're paying somebody. I'm just going to do whole numbers. So let's just say it's $1,000 a month and they come in, they say, yes, I need to have at least $10,000 a month. Well, this is a $1,000 a month job. You should not be applying for this job. if you need $10,000 a month, which is awesome that you need that. I appreciate you telling me, but there's no way it's going to work. If they come in, they say, well, I need like 1250. All right, maybe it's in ballpark. I'll take a look at that. Even though the job said 1,000, I'm not going to be too out of shape if it's close, but if it's wildly off, it's a kick out. Right. So there you go through. And then of course, different niches. I always like asking this anyway, just because, you know, I've had people say like, I don't like dealing with anything that talks about smoking cigarettes or things like that. People sort of have those sort of things. And if that, you know, this would us at the back in the day, this is like way back in the days would affect us, not so much anymore. But again, another confirmation question you can do. Okay. So now we've got the job posting. Its job is repelling to say, if you don't have these skills, like working with this type of person, like being a part of this type of company, and have followed directions, right? Now your application, then the application says, okay, my job is to also kick you out. So first thing is I need to make sure you self-rate in a way that is, you know, all around thinking it through. And if you do that, then you're going to go through the decoy questions. And if you don't get caught up by those, because again, you're thinking your way through this, you're still demonstrating to me that you're probably the right person. Everybody else who isn't is gone. Then you go through the confirmation questions, right? So I'm checking. This job was full-time. Did they say they want full-time? This job said it paid $1,000 a month. Do they want $1,000 a month? So I'm checking that stuff out. Are the hours going to be appropriate for what I need them to do as part of the team? Especially with time zones, because it might be overnight my time, but I need them on calls if that's what this job requires. So that's why I like the time questions, the confirmation. So anybody that makes it through that at this point, that's where I'm starting to go on the interview, right? This is the interview process itself. So what I will do, and this is where I'm going to kind of scroll down here. I'm going to kind of walk through a little mental map of how I think this through. Now, the reason here, we're going to start with this as your candidate that's sitting here in the middle. The biggest tip I can give you on an interview is to avoid thinking, wow, they can do this job. Or another way to say that would be they have the potential to do this job. That's not what you want. You never want to hire for that. That almost always implodes, right? Or at least the odds are against you. You don't want somebody who can one day be the job, because you need them now to be the job. They already are doing the job. They're already doing the things you need them to do. They're just doing it someplace else right now. And you need them to do that stuff here. So think about a chef. If you were trying to hire a chef for a restaurant, they need to know the different types of ingredients. They need to know how to use spice, how to use salt, fat, right? Proteins, and all this different stuff that chefs know how to do. You can't take somebody who's like, I love food, and I've learned how to use a microwave, and I think it's amazing when food is cooked, and I would love to learn how to cook more food and become a chef. Like, yes, could they be a master chef one day? Probably, but you don't need a master chef one day. You need a master chef now. So you have to hire somebody who has those skills now, right? So make sure that when you're talking to these individuals, they already are the person you need. They're just someplace else. Now, how do we do that? And that's what all this stuff is for. So I'm just going to zoom in so you can kind of see some ideas, but I'll create these with either it'll be in your head after a while because you get so used to it. But in the beginning, I think it's helpful to sort of write stuff down. What are the main components that the chef would need, right? Like the person that you need, these skills that they would have to have, how they think about stuff. What type of person are they? What are the things they're already doing? So if this was somebody for, let's say, measurement team or something like that, they need to be able to research. Why? Because they have to be able to solve problems. They need to be able, if it's a support team, I need them to be able to offer support. Like they naturally demonstrate that they support people naturally. I don't need to train them to do customer support. They already are those people. They're supportive people who like helping people. I'm just going to then train them how to do it our way, but they already offer support, right? That sort of thing. If they speak in stories, right? Maybe you've got a copywriter and you're trying to interview for them. Do they tell a story? That might be something you're looking for. I need them to speak in story form so that when they're explaining things, they explain it 3 or 4 different ways so that it lands, so that I am persuaded, right? Maybe that. And et cetera, et cetera. That's kind of what all these are for, right? Do they take responsibility? Are they comfortable? You know, a skill might be a spreadsheet, or they create systems. They naturally improve themselves, right? All these different things. So I'll come up with a few of these for the job itself as I'm thinking it through. Then when I'm on the interview, what I'm basically doing, and again, I'm doing this mostly making notes on the resumes as I go through and do it. But what I'm doing is I'm like, okay, tell me about a time. This is the most important question I can tell you. Tell me about a specific time when you had to handle a customer support issue that you did not know what the exact issue was, but it was your job to help the customer get the solution, right? And again, I'm assuming at this point we're hiring for some customer service rep, let's say. What was the specific situation and how did you handle it? And then you just stay quiet. And you're going to need to give them some time because they are going to need to think about a lot of these questions, right? In a perfect world, they haven't been asked those questions before because you ask different questions because you're, going through ProfitSchool. So we ask different questions that way. So when I ask tell me about a specific time when, right? And I'm doing that and I'm listening. Okay. Do they offer support, right? Are they naturally supportive people? That's what I'm asking. So they might say, well, yeah, at ABC company, I was working with a small team. What happened was I saw I was trying to help out the owner or the manager or the leader or whoever it was. I was trying to help them out. I was in the CRM and I noticed that a customer had emailed them and they hadn't seen that email yet. So I first went to the person whose email it was and said, hey, did you see this? If you want, I can help out by doing X, Y, and Z. I'm like, okay. So now they've demonstrated to me that they are a person who naturally already offers support. They're already a naturally supportive person. So I don't have to train that, right? Because you really can't train some of this stuff. They either are, they're not. So great, cool. They offer support. So now when they're doing that, let's assume I'm looking for research skills. Like, okay, how do they solve the problem? So then I might hear them and they're going, well, if let's assume it's what an idea of like a negative answer might be. They say, and I'm looking for research. Can they solve problems on their own? Right. So do they take responsibility and solve problems on their own? Now that story tells me they're already pretty supportive people. That's great. Maybe I'm listening a little more. So I might say, okay, cool. Tell me about a specific time when you had to solve a problem. You were given very little direction. You had a result you had to achieve. You were giving very little direction on how to achieve that result. You basically had to figure it out. What was the thing? And then what happened, right? Tell me about that thing and what happened. And they go, well, I was assigned this thing. I needed to get this result. I had to, improve this page or create this tag or write this thing, whatever the thing was, doesn't matter. But they say, well, so I tried and I wasn't really sure what to do. So what I did is I waited, I brought it up on the team meeting and I was asking the boss and the manager and I worked with my manager and they would help me to do this. Okay. Takes responsibility. Sure. Because they are the one that's leading the charge. But research skills, they didn't mention any research skills. They basically just said, yeah, I just went and I talked to the manager. Now, if they had said, well, first thing I would do is I went to Google and I started looking for it. I'm already like, yep, they're a researcher. That's good. They can solve problems on their own. But if that wasn't there, I just go, okay, cool. They're not that person yet. Does that mean that they're kicked out? Not necessarily, because the interview is a whole picture, but it's already like, okay, there's a reason to not move forward with them, especially if you have more interviews coming through, which you should. So we kind of go through that same thing. Tell me about a time when, if I need a specific thing, right? Where they're like, I need somebody that knows spreadsheets really well. Tell me about a time when you had to take a spreadsheet and reformat it properly because it was too much data, and you had to create the spreadsheet in a way that somebody who wasn't really comfortable with spreadsheets could use it. Tell me about that. What'd you do? How'd you change it? And they go, oh, well, I had this one spreadsheet. It was all data dump from this BigQuery export or whatever the thing was. I then took it, I color coded it, I made drop downs, I made conditionally formatting. I go, this, and this. Okay, they know spreadsheets, right, as they come through. And that's kind of what you do. So you'll put some stuff where it's like, hey, these are the no's. This is maybe they're this person, right? They definitely seem to do this. I'm not sure if they're asking enough questions. And now you've got a way to objectively, even though it is from a subjective standpoint, but you are kind of objectively grading them. You're auditing this interview to kind of see, are they already doing this job? Because that's what you're trying to find. You're trying to find somebody who already is this job. They're just not here in your company yet, right? So that's kind of the interview. That's what you're looking for. And really, to kind of keep the theme going, what I'm looking for is reasons why they are not the person, right? They shouldn't be allowed in our castle because I need to protect our team. I can't have a bunch of people, and this is what helps with the cultural fit stuff. I can't have, because I convinced myself that this person looked really good on paper, that I bring them in and they're the wrong cultural fit. And then it screws up the energy in the team. And they end up costing me a lot more money than just their salary, right? Because the team's all spun up or something like that. You got to be careful of that, especially with small teams. So what I'll do is when I'm on these interviews, again, I am always looking for a reason to kick them out. That is the job of the interview. But I can objectively see it here. And I'd be like, yeah, they don't really have this. They don't really have this. They don't really have this. And then I can decide, is it a deal killer or not? How important is it? Especially if I have limited interviews I've gone through. Is there maybe a certain amount of training I can do, or can I offload some of the job to somebody else in the company so that this person really is just the one aspects of the job they have that I can give it to them and maybe carve something out. Those are the kind of situations I go through when we talk about that. So, oops, let me just pull this back down. So again, first thing we're trying to do is we want to make sure to kick out, right? So we're trying to repel again. So that's the whole point of this. You want to make sure that only the right people are making it in your organization, right? Because you want to protect your team, and your team will respect you for that as you go through. So some tips on the interviews. So I'll give you on, we already talked about already are, right? I think that's the biggest tip I could give you. You're not finding somebody who can do the job or has the potential to be your next new team member. You're looking for somebody who already is your new team member. They're just not officially on your team yet. They already are that. So then when you go through, what I like to do is I will go through and I'm going to do the resumes, and we'll talk briefly about this and then kind of wrap it up, go into Q&A stuff if anybody's got questions. When I'm going through the resumes, I always start bottom up. So I will look at the resume itself. And again, I don't really have any examples or I would bring them up. Actually, you know what? Let's find out if we can. Let's do this live. Because I bet you I can find some sample resumes. And then we'll walk through. Look at that. Okay, so let's bring in some sample resumes. Here's what we're going to do. Yay, Google. So I'm going to go through. So let's talk about Pat. Oh, that's not going to work. So I was hoping that could work here. Nope. All right. I was hoping I could get into these. That is not going to work, and I'm not going to be able to read them. All right, never mind. Anybody's got resumes. I'm happy to kind of go through them. I'll shoot you a quick little video of how I'm looking through their resume if you want. But the long story short is I'm going to bottom up. So I take a look at the jobs. Yes, I'm looking for people who are changing jobs every 2 months because they're just going to do that to you too. I'm looking for trends and patterns. But if they've had decent job time of a few years somewhere, that's normally a good sign. But what I'll do is I'll have them tell a story. I've already got the resume printed out, and I'll tell them, okay, let's go through your resume. And you tell me, kind of going back to the beginning of time for them, wherever that resume starts. Again, when I say start, it's at the bottom, right? Because typically it's chronological. So start where you were at this last job with ABC company. Tell me why, what was it that interested you about that job? What exactly you did for it? And then why you ended up leaving. And then we'll move into the next one. Tell me about why you went to that job, what you did, why you ended up leaving for the next job. And we kind of go through that. And then stay curious. And that's my biggest tip when it comes to resumes is be curious. Because I think a lot of time people are using resumes to sort of just check off boxes like, okay, cool. So you did that and then you did this job. Okay, that's exactly what it says here. So thank you. But that's not particularly useful. You can read the resume. If all they do is read the resume to you, you're not getting enough from them. So you got to be curious in the resumes, dig into it. So when they say, oh, well, I did this, this, and this, and you're like, that's what's on the resume. You go, okay, so tell me more about this, this, and that. Tell me what specifically does this thing mean, right? Even if you know, you want them to explain it to you because you're testing them, right? You're looking for a reason to kick them out, essentially, right? To repel them out of this process because you want to protect your team. So you go through the resume. Tell me about the time when, and it's when you go into specifics. You can start doing that, and that's where this comes in, right? This other thing we were talking about here. Sorry about the swinging us around. There we go. So that's where you start doing this. The tell me about a time when questions as you're going through your resumes. So that was kind of the highlights I wanted to sort of pass through as we are doing our little test here. And then give me just a second because I need to go back and find where all my fun stuff is. Okay, perfect. So I've got that there. I'm going to stop sharing and then we can go into any Q&A that anybody's got. Otherwise we will wrap it up. Because again, this is like our soft launch. This is our quick and dirty, just sort of testing the tech. Final week of that. We're going to be doing some other changes, by the way, in ProfitSchool, changing some of the groups around, things like that, because sometimes you can't post into them. We didn't realize how we were setting it up, but we're going to fix all of that over the coming weeks. And then any suggestions that people have, we will have as well. So I don't currently see anything in the chat, which is perfectly fine because I knew it would be a light crowd. So we're not expecting too much on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it up here. And I'm going to see if I've continued to screw up my slides. Let's find out. I'm going to start sharing these screens and see if I absolutely mess those up. So next slide, please. Let me get on. All right, here we go. So just for tips for the next hires, wrap it up, use a wide to top of funnel. This is a benefit of this whole process. When you can automate so much of this that you can have this huge wide top of funnel. You can take a job post everywhere. You can have thousands of candidates apply. But when you automate stuff, like we talked about that Gmail, just as a tiny bit of automation, you won't see them if they're bad, right? And you have to assume they're all bad, right, at this level. So it kicks them out. You never see them. You only see the right, maybe 50, whatever it is, 20 that are applicant worthy. At that point, you send them the application, right? So the right candidate's going to find you. It's making their job easier by removing all the rest of them. You can see them now. Then it's send them the application. You got your decoys, the confirmations, everything else in there. Then you're coming down saying, okay, let's go through the interview. Are they already doing this job, just not for us? That's what I'm looking for. I do not care about potential when I'm trying to hire. I care about potential when they're already hired and I'm trying to train for their next new job, the next new version of who they're about to be. I absolutely do that, just not at the hiring process, because I'm not trying to hire for something I'm going to need in the future. I'm trying to hire for something I need now. That's why they already are doing the job. Cannot emphasize that enough. And then use the resumes as a tool, right? It's a tool for them to tell their story, but your job is to be curious, dig in, ask questions. Do not be afraid to find where there's an error. For example, when you're looking at patterns, somebody might say, why'd you leave that job? Well, my boss, they were just really on me all the time. And they were really kind of micromanaging. Nobody really liked them all that much. And so there were a lot of people quitting. And I was just one of those. And you're like, okay, I get that. That happens. Then why'd you quit the second job? And key point, quit. Well, I quit the second job because it was pretty good, but then it got to a point where I just wasn't growing enough, and I was talking to my boss, and they weren't really helping me out with stuff. Okay, so now I got two boss problems potentially, where the boss was the reason, not them, the boss. Maybe this is okay. Let's go to the next job. Okay, what was your next job? Why'd you leave that one? Or why are you looking now? Maybe they're still working there. Why are you looking? What's happening? And it might be, well, I just can't grow anymore. I want to do a bunch of different stuff, and the boss, they've already told me that I can't grow in the position. So I'm thinking, okay, so you've got three different challenges here where it could be that they are just people who get bored very, very quickly. Could be. I don't know this for a fact, but this is what I'd be thinking. They get bored. They want to do new things all the time. And the boss is like, no, you need to do your job. Like, I need you to do this. You're not capable of this other thing yet. That could be happening. So then I start digging into that. And that's where I'm like, okay, I'm curious. So tell me about a time, like, give me an example of a specific thing you would want to do, but that the boss isn't allowing you. Right. And they go, oh, I would want to do this, this, and this other project. You're like, okay, well, how does that relate to the current job description yet or job you have with them? Well, it really doesn't, but I really want to do. I'm like, okay, you're going to come into my company. You're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to say, well, I'm definitely going to be your email copywriter, but then I'm going to want to do all the Facebook ads too. And I'm going to try to do that. And like, that's not, it's not a thing. So you're looking for those trends and patterns in the resumes, and they will tell a story. The more that you ask those questions, the more you are curious, and be kind. Like, again, your job is not to give them a job. Your job is to escort them out of the building because they accidentally got in there. So we're going to be kind about that because most people are not a good fit, but the ones that are naturally make it through your filters as we're going through. So you don't actually have to work that much at it. You sort of just go through those motions. All right. So we talked about questions already. So at this point, thank you. We're just going to wrap this up here. Appreciate you being here. Any questions or comments people have, especially because most of this is going to be seen by people on the recordings, I'm sure. Just leave them in the comments and that should pop them up. In fact, I'd love that as a test anyway, just so we can make sure that it pops up and we can see it as admins and get you answers to the things that you're looking. If you have a friend, somebody else that is interested in some of this Profit School stuff as we go through, especially to see more trainings, because Jeff and I are going to be continuing this each week with different trainings that we'll be talking about, different ways of managing teams, growing teams, etc., improving your own systems. If you have topics you want covered, put it into that Profit School update section is fine for now. And then if you have a friend that wants to visit, just go to ProfitSchool.com. That's now been set up so they can join the free community, what we're currently calling Greenhorns, and they can join us there as well. And then they can have access to all these trainings in addition. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I'm going to stop my official share here, and I appreciate everyone being here, and we will see you on the next little live event that we do at Profit School. Thanks, y'all. Take care.